I want you to take a second and imagine something for me.
Okay.
Imagine you have just lived through a catastrophic, world-altering pandemic.
Just devastating.
Right. And at the exact same time, you've been weathering the fallout of a massive, devastating global war. Your entire way of life, the basic rhythm of your day-to-day existence has been completely turned upside down.
Everything you know is just gone.
Exactly. And then amidst all that sheer exhaustion and honestly profound uncertainty, you are asked to step into a voting booth and choose what comes next for your country.
Which is a huge ask.
It really is. What do you even vote for? When the dust settles, what do you actually want?
Yeah.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are exploring a concept that perfectly captures that exact feeling. We're talking about Warren G. Harding's 1920 presidential campaign slogan, "Return to Normalcy."
It's a classic.
It is. And we are working from a fantastic source text today, a detailed, comprehensive Wikipedia article that breaks down the history, the linguistics, and the lasting political impact of this incredibly potent phrase.
It's a great read.
Our mission for this deep dive is to explore how a single, seemingly made-up word defined an entire post-crisis era, sparked a surprisingly fierce national grammar debate, and create a political blueprint that, well, campaigns are still actively using today.
Yeah, it is great to be here with you to dig into this.
Yeah.
As you can see, I've set my backdrop today to a 1920s historical archive.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, think dusty bookshelves, brass lamps, sepia-toned newspapers. The history we are exploring today is just so rich. It is incredibly fascinating to observe how the psychological need for familiarity,
That craving.
yes, that desperate craving for comfort after a massive, unprecedented crisis, can completely and totally steer the course of an entire nation. We are looking at something that goes far beyond standard political theory here. It taps into something deeply fundamentally human.
Okay, let's unpack this. To really understand the immense power of this phrase, we have to look closely at the state of the world in 1920.
The context is everything.
The historical context here is absolutely everything. The United States and the world at large had just been dragged through an absolute nightmare. First, you had World War I, which wasn't just a military conflict. It fundamentally shattered the global order. It introduced mechanized slaughter, trench warfare.
Mustard gas.
Right, and a scale of devastation that people previously thought was just impossible. And if that wasn't enough, you had the Spanish flu pandemic sweeping the globe,
Booker's terrifying.
bringing sickness and death right to people's front doors. It was a silent terror that closed schools
Shuttered businesses.
and atomized society.
Yeah.
Life had been completely upended.
Yeah.
And then, on May 14th, 1920, Warren G. Harding gives a speech and drops a line that would change the trajectory of the decade. He proclaimed that America needed not nostrums, but normalcy.
Nostrums.
Yeah, a nostrum in that context, meaning a fake medicine or a quick, untested fix. And he didn't just say it once either. 2 months later, during a homecoming speech, he doubled down, reaffirming his endorsement of normal times and a return to normalcy.
What's fascinating here is the underlying why of that specific strategy. Harding explicitly recognized that the perspective of humanity had been fundamentally altered by these dual traumas.
It wasn't the same world.
Not at all. His solution was just as much psychological as it was political. If you look at the rhetoric of the era, he wasn't offering a grand utopian vision of the future.
No shining city on a hill.
Exactly. He was offering a very specific, highly targeted kind of relief. He argued that the way forward was actually to look backward, to seek normalcy, by restoring life to exactly how it was before the war.
Just hit rewind.
Pretty much. He was speaking directly to a traumatized electorate and saying, essentially, don't you just want things to be quiet again?
But wait, I have to push back on that a little bit.
Sure.
Was normalcy actually a real, actionable policy, or was it just a brilliant, empty marketing slogan?
That is a fair question.
Because saying you want things to be quiet doesn't exactly tell me how you are going to govern a rapidly industrializing nation. So what does this all mean when the rubber meets the road?
That is the crucial question. And the historical record shows it was absolutely a concrete platform. Harding's conception of normalcy translated into 3 main policy pillars: deregulation, a specific brand of civic engagement, and strict isolationism.
Okay, so there was substance there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
To fully grasp the weight of that platform, you have to look at what Harding was actively rejecting. He was pushing back hard against the prevailing political winds of his predecessors. Woodrow Wilson had just exhausted the nation by trying to build the League of Nations
All right.
and trying to entangle the U.S. in incredibly complex European diplomacy. Harding looked at that global idealism and said, no more. We're locking the front door and tending to our own house.
So it was a total rejection of the global stage.
Exactly, and it was also a rejection of domestic exhaustion.
What do you mean?
Well, before Wilson, you had the energetic domestic activism of Theodore Roosevelt. The progressive trust busting, the constant executive action.
The nonstop moat.
Right. The public had essentially lived through 2 decades of high-octane activist government. Harding favored a return to the earlier, much more hands-off, laissez-faire policy of the United States. He wanted to shrink the government's footprint at home and just let business run itself.
Give everyone a break.
Exactly. I want you, the listener, to really think about the mechanics of that appeal for a moment. Think about your own life today.
Yeah, we can all relate to this.
When you are feeling completely overwhelmed by information overload, or when the global news cycle just feels entirely chaotic and unending, the appeal of just going back to basics, of shutting the door and returning to a simpler time, is a profoundly powerful draw.
It really is.
Harding weaponized that exact human impulse. He turned the desire to tune out into a legitimate political philosophy.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. You would think a comforting, almost sleepy message like that would be universally embraced by an exhausted public.
You'd think so.
But it actually sparked a massive controversy. And the controversy wasn't even about the deregulation or the isolationism. It was about the grammar.
The grammar debate is my favorite part of this whole thing.
His critics practically laughed him out of the room. They accused him of just fumbling the English language and making up a clumsy neologism on the spot.
A total fake word.
Right. They argued that he was trying to say normality and just didn't know any better. They tried to paint him as this uneducated provincial guy from Ohio who couldn't even speak properly.
And that is where the linguistic history becomes so critical, because that elitist backlash actually backfired spectacularly.
It totally did.
Think about the optics of this. You have a bunch of highly educated East Coast intellectuals essentially grammar policing a candidate from Ohio.
An ultimate unforced error.
Truly. By attacking his vocabulary, his detractors inadvertently made Harding look like a regular, relatable person to the average voter. It framed him as an outsider being bullied by the establishment.
Which is a populist dynamic we still see playing out constantly today.
All the time.
That is such a sharp insight. The grammar police made him the man of the people. And the best part is, Harding didn't even back down.
No.
He was a former newspaper editor, so he actually knew his way around words. He fired right back at his critics, stating publicly that the word normalcy was in his dictionary, but the word normality wasn't.
And if we look at the historical evidence, Harding was actually right.
Really?
Yes. The linguistic historians point out that there is clear, contemporaneous documentation proving normalcy had been listed in dictionaries as far back as 1857.
So it wasn't made up at all?
Not at all. It was an accepted variant. But here is the absolute best detail from the research. You ready for this?
Hit me.
Before Harding used it in his campaign, normalcy was essentially an obscure math term.
Wait, math? Like algebra?
Geometry.
You are kidding.
No. It was used in geometry to describe the state of being at right angles.
Right angles. Haha. That is amazing.
I know. I get way too excited about this stuff. He took this incredibly niche, completely forgotten mathematical word and entirely hijacked it, turning into the defining cultural and political buzzword of the 1920s.
Haha, I honestly love that detail. A geometry term becoming the linguistic vehicle for a nation's post-war trauma. It is such a brilliant piece of historical trivia.
It really is.
But what I find so striking about this whole campaign is the PR execution. Because he didn't just give speeches about a return to a quiet life, he gave the public a visual representation of it.
Yes, the optics.
And he did it by utilizing a PR strategy that is so highly memorable and honestly so modern. When you look at the newspaper archives from the campaign, Harding is constantly photographed with his dog, Laddie Boy.
Laddie Boy.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful detail. But it's important to understand the calculated mechanics behind it.
It wasn't just a cute photo op.
Well, it was cute. But featuring Laddie Boy, who was an Airedale Terrier, by the way, in the newspapers, wasn't just about showing off a pet to get some easy press. It was specifically designed to instill a cozy, domestic image that directly reinforced his broader vision of normalcy.
Oh, wow.
Think about the stark visual contrast the public was experiencing. Voters had spent years reading grim newspaper headlines, accompanied by photographs of trench warfare, gas masks, and massive infirmaries filled with flu patients.
Just heavy, heavy imagery.
Exactly. And now, Harding is providing the press with headlines featuring a very good boy playing fetch on the lawn.
It's brilliant.
It was an intentional, visual manifestation of peace, quiet, and domestic tranquility. It told the voter, the crises are over. We are back to worrying about normal, everyday things.
And the craziest part of all of this is how flawlessly that entire package worked. The math term, the rejection of globalism, the dog on the lawn, it all resonated deeply.
Right.
Harding didn't just win the 1920 presidential election, he secured a massive mandate. The historical record highlights that he won with a staggering 60.4% of the popular vote, though some historical texts note it at 60.3%.
A rounding error, really.
Right. Regardless of the decimal, that is an absolute undeniable blowout. The public overwhelmingly bought what he was selling. They didn't want the complexities of the League of Nations. They wanted the dog. They wanted the quiet. They wanted the normalcy.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that this concept, this specific rhetorical tool, absolutely did not die in 1920.
Not even close.
The appeal of a return to normalcy becomes a recurring cyclical theme in American history whenever there's a period of massive upheaval. The research cites Chalmers M. Roberts, a prominent journalist for the Washington Post, who made some brilliant historical connections regarding this exact phenomenon.
What did he find?
Roberts compared the 1920 desire for a return to normalcy directly to the national mood during the 1946 midterms. And if you look at 1946, it makes perfect sense. The country had just emerged from the incredible trauma and total mobilization of World War II. They were exhausted all over again.
Right, the exact same psychological craving for a baseline.
Precisely. Roberts also compared it to the 1992 presidential election, which came right after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War.
Wow, so the pattern holds.
It does. In every single one of these instances, you have a population that has been subjected to a sustained period of high-stakes, abnormal geopolitical tension. They are tired of holding their breath, and they invariably look for a leader who promises that it is safe to exhale, to turn their attention back inward to domestic life.
It's such a pervasive, powerful idea that it even bleeds into our entertainment and how we fictionalize history.
Oh, yeah.
Just as a quick pop culture note from the articles, the acclaimed television show Boardwalk Empire actually highlights this exact moment in history.
It's a fantastic show.
Yeah. The 12th episode of the series takes place entirely during this 1920 election, and the episode is literally titled, A Return to Normalcy. It shows just how defining that phrase was for the era. It became the cultural shorthand for the 1920s.
It absolutely did.
But it is fascinating to see how this 1920s playbook survived well into the modern era. When you look at the historical record, campaigns still tap into this exact sentiment today. For instance, historians note that Joe Biden's 2020 campaign relied on a very similar rhetorical promise.
Yes, the source text draws a very clear line there.
Exactly, and we should be incredibly clear here. We are just looking at how the source text connects these historical dots. We aren't taking any sides or endorsing any political viewpoints, left or right.
Of course, just strictly analyzing the history.
Right. Specifically, the articles point out that Biden's campaign was explicitly associated with a return to normalcy regarding his promises to end the divisiveness of the preceding years, as well as his central focus on tackling the COVID-19 pandemic and restoring a baseline of functionality.
That's a perfect example of the cyclical nature of this rhetoric. Furthermore, the analysis connects Harding's original concept to other major pervasive modern phrases.
Like what?
Well, the idea of establishing a new normal, which is a term we have all heard ad nauseum in recent years, is fundamentally concerned with trying to emerge from abnormal periods, just like the electorate was trying to do in 1920.
Oh, that makes sense.
The historical analysis also links the underlying sentiment of normalcy directly to the slogan, "Make America Great Again."
Another massive era-defining phrase.
Exactly. And again, when you strip away the specific partisan politics of these modern examples, you find that all of these concepts share the exact same rhetorical DNA.
The same playbook.
Yes, they all acknowledge a current period of abnormality, crisis, or decline, and they all promise the voter a restoration of a better, more familiar, and more comfortable time.
It really is incredible how cyclical it all is. Tracing the lineage back, you realize that so much of modern political messaging is just echoing a century-old playbook.
We're just repeating the cycles.
So, to synthesize our journey today, we started by looking at a world utterly traumatized by unprecedented global war and a devastating invisible pandemic. We saw how a politician, Warren G. Harding, correctly read the room and capitalized on that sheer public exhaustion.
You saw the fatigue.
He did. He took an obscure, forgotten geometry term, normalcy, and elevated it into a defining political philosophy built on deregulation and isolationism. He successfully navigated a national grammar debate that actually made him look more relatable to the common voter.
The ultimate backfire for his critics.
Seriously, he sold his vision to the masses with carefully orchestrated pictures of his dog, Laddie Boy, and he rode that profound human craving for comfort all the way to a historic 60+% landslide victory.
And that is exactly why digging into history like this is so crucial for you.
Yes.
Understanding the story of 1920 helps you see right through the rhetoric of modern crises.
Right.
When you turn on the news today and hear politicians promising a return to the good old days or pledging to restore things to exactly how they used to be, you now know the exact playbook they are using.
You can see the strings being pulled.
You know, it was written over 100 years ago, and you understand the powerful, deeply ingrained psychological strings it is attempting to pull.
It completely changes how you listen to a stump speech. You stop hearing just the words and start seeing the psychological architecture underneath them.
This raises an important question, though, and I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over long after we wrap up today.
Ooh, all right.
We have established that the promise of normalcy is incredibly powerful. It wins landslide elections.
Clearly.
But if normalcy is just a subjective memory of a time before a crisis, is returning to it actually possible?
Oh, wow.
Or do profound crises like global wars and pandemics permanently alter us, meaning the normal we are trying so desperately to return to is just a fiction we invented to comfort ourselves?
Oh, that is a heavy and genuinely fascinating thought to end on. The idea that normalcy is just a fictional comfort we build to get us through the hard times.
I'm going to think about.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We absolutely love unpacking these complex historical threads with you and seeing how they connect to the world we live in today. Until next time, stay curious.